Chapter 4.2, Find the Errors. We are going to go through kind of the most common errors that I found students made when they submitted their assignments. Again, this will not give you the answers, but hopefully it will give you the direction, put you in the right direction. Okay, so here we go. So we look at our first transaction here in this ledger here as we're sitting here. Overall, everything looks pretty good. We're pretty good here, right? The issue is right here. We have to fill the post reference. Well, where do we get that? That post reference comes from the journal page, and we're going to put a 1 there. That's where we're going to use that. So that's the first thing. Next thing, as we move kind of down here a little bit, again, look at by use supply. First thing that we'll notice is our post reference isn't filled out. Again, that is coming from our post reference column. That is coming from journal page 1. That is telling us where did we get this information from. Next part, as we kind of scroll down here on my post reference, you'll notice that we do have a balance for the first transaction, but the second transaction is missing a balance. So how do we figure out the balance? Well, if you think about what's happening here, the long way about it is, if you think about what's happening here, is we bought something on account from by use supply on the July 10th, as it's stated here. Now on the 20th, we are paying them 120 of the 180. So basically, we have a $60 balance left. So that's what we need to make sure that our balance says $60. Now, that's the easy way of doing this. The longer way of doing this and thinking of it here is this. We are journalizing to calculate the balance. To calculate the balance, a couple things. If we have a credit balance and a debit entry, as we do here, okay, credit and debit, CR, DR, okay, they are different. If you notice that the credit and the debit are different, since they are different, we are going to find the difference, or for you mathematicians out there, we are going to subtract. So in this case, we are going to take 180, which is our credit balance, minus 120 to give us 60. Now, the opposite is true. So if we have a debit balance and a credit entry, they are different. So we will find the difference and we will minus that one. That's a later one on there. So the opposite is true. But going back to the transaction that we have here, now if you look at this one, when we are subtracting, if the debit, whether it be the balance or the entry, is greater than the credit, our answer in the balance will be the debit. If our credit number is larger than our debit number, then our answer will be a credit. Now in this case, we have our debit, which is 180. I'm sorry, back up. Got ahead of myself. Our credit balance, which is 180, is greater than our debit of 120. Therefore, it's going to be a $60 credit. Now that's the logical way to do it. The other reason is this. Accounts payable are a liability account. They sit on the right-hand side of the accounting equation. And the right-hand side of the accounting equation has a normal balance of a credit. Liabilities have a normal balance of a credit. So therefore, we are going to have a normal balance of a credit. If we were to have a balance in a liability account of a debit, that pretty much means that we have overpaid. So there's that. Now, we talked about the difference, and we talked about that. That's a key. So what happens if they're the same? Well, if we have a debit balance and a debit entry, they are the same, so we are going to find the sum. If we have a credit balance with a credit entry, they are the same, and we are going to find the sum. The balance will be the balance for a debit entry and a debit balance will be a debit. A credit balance and a credit entry is going to be a credit. Keep those in mind. That keeps them there. Also, go back to Chapter 2 and your learning in your normal balance learnings, and then you can go there. So that's kind of the big issue that people find. I think if people can find out those, they'll be good. As we continue on, now we start talking about some balance issues, and this goes back to what we just said here. So if you look here, this person did a nice job, but however, what did they do? Their balance is incorrect here. So again, if you think about this, we have a credit balance of 180. right? We have a debit entry of 120. So they are different, aren't they? They are different. So since they're different, we're going to find the difference. Our credit is larger than our debit. Therefore, it's going to be a $60 credit, not a $120. They just extended it. If we go down here and we look at this one, accounts receivable, again, we have a debit balance of 150. We have a credit entry of 100. Well, our debit, they're different. So therefore, we're going to subtract them. We're going to go 50, and my entry will be a debit because my debit is larger than my credit. Also, because it's an asset account, it sits on the left-hand side of the accounting equation, and since it sits on the left-hand side of the accounting equation, it has a debit balance, normal balance. So as we continue on here, look at what this person has done. Two things. Number one is they didn't extend this over, right? Zero. So as we go here, we have no balances. Sorry. As you see over here, we have no balance. They haven't put anything in their balances yet. So in order to calculate the balance on an empty ledger, well, let's start out here. And if we go 0 plus 2 equals what? 2. 0 plus 4 equals 4. 0 balance plus a debit entry is going to give us a debit entry, right? So in this case, it's 0. We're there. So if in this case we have our 150, we just need to extend that over to the debit of 150. Now in this case, we have a 150. So as we move on here, we have a 150 debit and a $100 debit. So they are the same, so we're going to find the sum, and that's going to be a $250 debit. We just added those together, and that's how we found them up. And if you think about it, what's happening when we debit supplies? We are buying supplies. Our supplies are increasing. Assets sit on the left-hand side of the accounting equation. Since they sit on the left-hand side of the accounting equation, they have a normal balance or an increased side of a debit. Continuing on here with our accounts payable. Again, same concept here. So here's the error that they made. They took the credit in the debit. Nope. A lot of times students think the debit and credit rules are there. They're not so much. This 150 needs to be over here. If it's 0 plus 2, 0 plus 2 is 2, 0 plus 4 is 4. 0 plus a credit will give us a credit entry, and that's what we have, not a debit one. Okay, same thing here. We have $150 balance of a credit. We have a $100 balance entry of a credit. They are the same, so therefore we are going to add them. We're going to go our 250, and it's going to be a credit, because ultimately what's happening here is we have bought something from Archer Supplies on account. We have bought multiple items, and the amount that we owe them has increased. Furthermore, the accounts payable sits on the right-hand side of the accounting equation. Right-hand side of the accounting equation is the credit side. We show increases in accounts payables and liabilities as credits. So there's that. So as we continue on here, as we move kind of towards the end here, first of all, if we're just looking at this journal page and nothing else, we'll find out that this person did not complete the process. Okay, they have this process here. They need to put those in here. If you notice, where do those numbers come from? Well, here's my accounts payable Bayou Supply. I'm going to go put that right there, okay? On this one, the check mark, that's a cash. Notice we are not using any special amount column, so we just make sure that we have a check mark in that post-reference column. Again, accounts payable Bayou Supply, and that's going to be my 210 coming from there, okay? So don't forget to do those. Now on this one, if we look at this transaction here, this student has not done any of the post references. So they need to make sure that these get filled out. Now, big key point. And I'm going to show you right now the mistake that a lot of students make. And I'll guarantee you, if you make this mistake, you are going to have a real hard time with this unit. So don't make this mistake. And that is as follows. If you notice here, the student did a nice job and went through and said, oh, I know all these numbers. I have them memorized. Well, here's the problem. When they get down here, they have not posted anything. Do not bulk fill. okay? Because if you bulk fill, like it looks like up here, you will get lost. Because at the end of the day, here's what's going to happen. If you look at what's happened, if we just specifically look at this one ledger here, okay, we can tell that if we were to do this transaction, again, I'm jumping around. Do not jump around for this example, okay? So July 15th, post reference is 1. I have an account received. I have a debit of 150. My balance is 150. Okay, it looks like on the 27th, I'm here. I'm 120, 100 credit rather. So then my now balance is a $50. If we didn't do this, we would go there and your boss would come to you and say, well, how much do we owe? How much money is does M. Kadam owe us? Well, if you looked at it, like, I don't know. But since we filled it out, now we can easily say that it's 150. Do not bulk fill these items. Don't press go. Don't collect $200. Don't do anything out on this form in the post reference column until the ledger is filled out. Once the ledger is filled out, the last step is then to take that 120. Make sure that is your last step. Do not bulk fill and make it your first step. You will get lost, it will be frustrating, and you will have a real hard time with this. Hope this helps. We'll see you.